Oh, so sorry about that. I was updating everything. If you were sitting here while I literally did nothing, I'm just going to share out the stream as well in a few places. Fill up the chat. I mean, I currently don't have the sound on because I don't really need it, but it's rather boring right now. I don't know if they're saying anything, but just a picture of the dais there. It's nice that they've got something put together this year. I appreciate that, but yeah, it's a little bit weird right now. Let me pull up the my big board over here, as well as the draft tracker. MLB's draft tracker is one of the best things that was ever created in the history of baseball, in my opinion. Let's see. Come on, draft tracker. So what we've seen so far with this first overall pick is it switched again. We had Vegas be all about Brooks Lee, and then today to Tamar Johnson. I don't know if anyone really knows what's going to happen here. It is a huge cluster. And yeah, I'm curious. I think we just think it's not Drew Jones. And Baltimore wants to spread it around, and I kind of get it because it's not the most awe-inspiring draft class in general. And the one thing I will say, though, is its depth isn't also all that particularly grand in this one. I am curious to see how they go about if they do. How should I phrase this? If they go under slot, how they're going to spread that money around and make this work for them successfully. Because right now, when I worked on doing an 80 pick mock, which I did do that. You can go find that over at my website, mlbdraftnow.blogspot.com. When I was out there doing that, it starts to get rough later into this draft. There's not a lot of great depth, and you especially the bats thin out, and I think we might see more the bats go early and pitching go a little bit later than expected, because both amongst the college and the prep, and especially amongst the prep group, the bats in this class thin out very quickly. So I think there's going to be a bit of a surprise in who's available later in the draft, but I do think part of that is just more behind the scenes stuff. Gotta update the little image that goes with this. No one's asked any questions yet, so we are good. What's interesting in these top 5 picks, though, while I go ahead and get this together, is the thought process of the Rangers being all in on Jackson Holliday. Maybe they are, and maybe because, again, I talked about it, it's not exactly a great depth class, so maybe you don't care about just going out and spending it all on one guy. Now, it's not going to be all, but he's going to take a good chunk of their pool there. And remember, because they signed free agents, they don't have a big draft pool. They have the 14th biggest pool in spite of having the 3rd overall pick. So I still think that they are a team very likely to take a quote-unquote haircut, as we use that terminology. And I just have it from a good source. Johnson is going 1. So Tamar Johnson 1. So I don't know who's in here. If we have 3 viewers. But yeah, if you are viewing Tamar Johnson 1, just got the little text alert here. So That is official. It does make sense. Elite hit tool. He's going to be cheaper. There are people who consider him the best player in this class. This is not a case of them sitting there and necessarily being super cheap. I understand there'll be people who view it that way. But yeah, he is... Huh? Now I got a weird text that maybe that wasn't the best information. Or not, apparently. Jackson Holiday. Okay. Interesting. So one of the things I've been saying about the Orioles system is they don't have a true shortstop. Now they do. So, and I'm also thinking that my MLB TV feed, when I talked about how creepy it was, I'm pretty sure it's just frozen. But yeah, so we have Jackson Holiday. Again, he's not going to be the cheapest guy here, but the Pittsburgh doesn't, or not Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Well, I mean, you should be used to the Guardians not playing, man. That's how it is. But Baltimore, this isn't a big savings. He's probably the number 2 signing bonus in this class. What might separate him is the positional value. Like I said, Baltimore does not have a true shortstop. Gunnar Henderson is great. I was a big fan of his dating back to when he was a high school kid. But he is likely a third baseman. I have not seen anyone who thinks he's going to stick it short. They get a sure shortstop, which there is incredible value in having that position. And they don't really have a natural shortstop. They get a guy with bloodlines. They get a guy who's been highly productive. It's not going to be huge savings, and it is humorous because literally 4 other guys are mentioned here. Like, Jackson Holiday has never really been the guy. And if you go back and listen to one of my podcasts where I did a mock in May, he was my sleeper selection to them because they don't have any shortstops in their system. So I didn't get it right, and I didn't get it right at all today. But I did, there was a logic to this that there has been for a while to this selection possibly happening. And, the way it has unfolded is maybe not what people necessarily expected. Yeah, it's like I said. Let me see if there's any other comments. I need to be better about that. But yeah, the need to mute all of this again as I try to get the actual thing to go. But yeah, I don't blame a team for looking at positional value, and I don't quite view Drew Jones as a super, like he's not can't miss. Not that anyone is really can't miss, but in general, I think that it is a pick that makes sense in terms of positional value, in terms of safety. In terms of just what he can bring to the table at that position. I am very curious to see what the final cost is. I don't know if he came down on it at all, but like if you had asked me who is the player in the top 10 most likely to get to college, I would have said Jackson Holiday. So this does definitely destroy both of my mocks. I don't know anyone who had this one right, though. Nobody. It was Lee. It was Johnson. It was Jones. The fact that I even mentioned it as a sleeper a few months ago makes it where I might have more than most people on that pick. So Again, I'm curious to see how this plays out. Like I said, I'm not really watching. I have it up just to kind of see as things pop, but I'm not paying too much attention to the stream itself. I get a little bit annoyed, if I'm being honest, with the stream because when you're looking at who's up there, it just always feels like Harold Reynolds just started watching this week. So I don't know. I just wish they really leaned into Mayo and Callis, who are just the best at this. But now it's where it gets interesting. So, I like to bring this up. A year ago, everyone and their mother said if Mayer got to the Tigers, they were going to take him, and they did not take him at all. They took Joe Bay. So we'll see. I mean, the conventional wisdom here is Drew Jones at 2. That I would get that right. I get at least one right in the mock this year. Very interesting to see if it continues to follow through with what we expect or if there is any more shakeup. Things get a little bit crazy right out of the drop, but not super crazy. Like I said, I think there is a logic to how we got to this point. I think there is very much a logic to this overall selection. If you are watching, make sure to drop me questions, things like that. Being a one-man show while I view can be boring for everyone if it is just completely one-sided. If there are any questions about the picks, the fits, anything like that, text back my source who gave me bad info. But from what I understand, Jeff Passan also got it wrong, so I'm in good Jeff company with getting that selection wrong. Saying no worries. Yeah, no worries. Let me know if you do hear anything. You don't want to burn a source even when things go poorly. I've talked about that. Once I had an agent assure me their client was going in the top 10, and I proceeded to watch him fall to nearly the second round. So it's not always perfect, but hey, always have some fun with it. And the draft is fun. And what does Baltimore get here? I guess I should give some actual analysis with it. Baltimore gets a player that when you're looking at the overall package, he can do a bit of everything. He's kind of a 5-tool shortstop. He should stick at shortstop. There are a lot of shortstops in this class. I feel comfortable saying they got one here who can stay at that position, hit for average, have a little bit of power. He was, on my final big board, I believe I had him 4th. So if you want to look at it that way, it's a bit of a reach. It is interesting. If you look at Johnson and Collier, I both have them higher because their ceilings are a bit higher. Holiday is just, a potential, 55 almost across the board. Maybe you get lucky and fall into a few 60s. I bet the constant comp for him is probably going to be someone like Corey Seager. I think that's probably you'd see something along those lines if you are inclined to look at comps overall. I want to thank everyone. We're up to 15 views, 15 concurrent views, and 3 likes, 80 overall views. Like I said, this second overall pick, Arizona has built up a really nice minor league system by going with ceiling, taking athletes. I loved Corbin Carroll, and I've been proven right with that one. I also really loved Alec Thomas, and I'm sorry if one listener of Locked On Guardians is here listening, because you're just going to be mad at me, because the Arizona Diamondbacks draft a lot of my favorite guys through the years. They have drafted several players like Blake Walton, Corbin Carroll, and Alec Thomas, and in all of those cases, I looked pretty good. Alec Thomas was a guy I thought for sure the Guardians were in draft. He fit their style to a T, and man, he would look nice in the outfield right now. Unfortunately, that did not come together. We have our next selection in. Thank you, Andrew. Glad to have you in here. Let's see. Did we go chalk? Let me switch back to my tracker. And it just hasn't popped up yet. So we're going to sit here and wait. Yep, chalk, as expected. Drew Jones is their guy. And it's Arizona goes ceiling. And it's worked out for them. And they've been very smart going that way. And he's not their number one prospect. He's not even the top center fielder in Arizona's system. but he's a very good player and continues to build a very nice minor leagues for that organization. It's going to be a lot of fun to see this team in a few years with all the talent. I mean, just think about it. Corbin Carroll, Alec Thomas, and Drew Jones. That's fun. Basically the thing I want to always point out is his dad fell apart at the age of 30. We don't see that as much anymore. If his dad had kept playing at even like just a average level, he'd probably be a no doubt Hall of Famer. We can argue if he should be in or shouldn't be in right now, but I think he would for certainly be in. He is bigger than his dad. He is stronger than his dad. The swing, if something goes wrong, it's going to be contact rates. But you gotta love what he brings. I mean, it's a potential plus glove, plus bat, and he's got the size to really just continue to fill out and get stronger. There's a reason why he was consensus number one. It is interesting. I don't know the last time this has happened. Our top two players are the two most expensive players in this draft. It is setting up now with the Rangers on the clock to go Parada here. And so I have a bit of a mixed feeling with this next selection because I've been pretty insistent throughout the process. Kevin Parada make the most sense, and if he is still here, then based on everything we heard, the big three for them are the two that were off the board, and then Parada. I am of mixed feel because I've been all over Parada as a connection to them all year, but I talked about this on my podcast from earlier today. My way too early mock draft had an outside chance of getting 4 picks early, 4 picks correct. That's the mock I write on the last day of the MLB season. I've gotten 2 picks right in the history of writing that piece, both Chicago White Sox selections. But I had Brooks Lee 1, which had a chance. I mean, he was the Vegas favorite yesterday, but Vegas didn't know anything. And then I had Parada at 5 and was Tamar Johnson at 6. I should pull this up and see. And I had Cole Young to the Reds, which might happen as well. Out of curiosity, I went back and looked. So my way too early mock at 1 was Brooks Lee, with sleeper being Jude Fabian or Chase DeLauter. I mean, those are just crazy sleepers. The Jude Fabian thing was just so I could talk about the fact that he had been the player they wanted to draft. Like I said, I didn't do the sleeper pick. If I had, it would have just been Brooks Lee and Tamar Johnson for the top pick with both of mine. It would have been pretty straightforward. Arizona would have been Drew Jones with Jackson Holiday as the sleeper. Texas, my way too early had Jace Jung here with Daniel Susac as a sleeper. Now I would say, I did Kevin Parada. If I didn't have Parada going there, then I would have had Lee as the sleeper. I would have gone with the college guy. It's a very conservative drafting front office that has mostly gone with that higher, safer college type of performer in the draft. So they've been connected almost entirely to prep talent, but with the way they've drafted, plus with a smaller pool, one wonders. But we'll see. And I got a screen freeze, of course. Kumar Rocker. Well, there's your shocker. Wow. They must have really liked him a year ago. Here's the thing. So I've got, you can see in the background, I believe, my big board is streaming over this shoulder, right? Here's the thing. I have Rocker in the 40s. They weren't sharing the medicals. I was tempted to take him off my board. I don't understand. I mean, yeah, they're probably going to Oof. I don't. He's just, I mean, he's a huge risk. It's not like he's, oof. My analysis is it's a risky pick. It's a bad pick. It is not a pick I would take. I don't think a healthy rocker is a top 3 player in this class. And that's just the truth of the matter. If this was Rocker from a year ago and he was 100% healthy, I don't think he's top 3. Wow. It got crazy. Everyone wanted chaos, right? Well, we got the chaos of the first pick, which was we had Vegas odds shift 3 times over the last 2 days. Jackson Holliday was never the guy. Then second pick is chalk. And then Kumar Rocker, where again, if this was a year ago and he had no arm issue, he wouldn't be the 3rd best player in this class for me. He wouldn't. He would be what I look at him from a year ago, and I look at this class, if I was to say that he is, a junior age and not a senior age, and that he didn't have shoulder surgery in the fall, and he didn't have any health concerns, I'd be slotting him 10. I would be slotting him 10 if he was a clean prospect right now. He is not a clean prospect. I mean, I assume you think it's underslot. One has to assume it's got to be underslot. I guess that's your hope, that this is a massive underslot, so maybe they'll get a nice player in round 2. I guess this basically says that to them, a year ago, Lighter was 1 and Rocker was 2. And wow. And then the Rangers don't pick again until the 3rd round. MLB draft never disappoints. Everyone's mock is gone. So Pirates on the board. Poor Pirates. Now, this is where it could get interesting as well, because the hot rumor late is that the Pirates would go Zach Neto here. Thank you, Andy, for joining us and jumping in. Frontier League is kind of like, I don't know, A-ball-ish from what I recall in the past. It's going to be interesting to see how we translate. It's definitely a bit of an underslot signing. We'll see if this is Zach Neto here or not. Tamar Johnson instead. Yep, Tamar Johnson. Nice pick by the Pirates. There's a nice rebound. The hot rumor had been Zach Neto. I like this pick. Tamar Johnson is the top player on my board at this point in time. Doing some backboard chatting with people here. No, I'm sorry. He's the number 2 player on my board. I still like this pick. He just hits. He hits the ball well. He is going to do, he just feels like a number 2, number 3 guy. Like, you just put him in your lineup, figure out the position later, just let the guy hit. It's a swing. It's a thing of beauty. It is a fantastic pick. Pirates absolutely nailed it. Oh, man. So here's the thing. Please go Parada. Please go Parada. Because if... it's higher than... Andy, it is higher than college ball. Yeah, it is. So it's, it's like maybe... I'd say it's like low A equivalent. Tamar won't play shortstop. Skrills, I appreciate everyone who's commenting. I appreciate everyone who's viewing. 163 views already, 6 likes, and currently 23 current watchers. Tamar's probably going to play second or left field, but dude can hit. Just, you drop him at second base, and he could win a batting title. He's got a fluid swing. He's got quick hands. He's got a nice... It's not like a bad uppercut. Like, it's the good launch angle, right? It's not like we talk about uppercut swing sometimes, but it's that one. And he'll crush a baseball if you do something wrong. He'll use the whole field. He's selective at the plate. I would stack him up against most of the college hitters right now, just an ability to like turn on a baseball, hit, and approach. That's my view. Sorry, I'm also trying to make our Texas host feel better because Bryce is awesome over at Locked On Rangers. It's hard if you are a Rangers fan right now. I don't know. I'm sure there's people who don't pay enough attention who are going to be, just know the name. And here's just to go back to the Rocker thing again. Pirates nailed this. I should give them more time and credit. But I always bring this up, and if you're a listener to my show, you know this story. No, not quite, Vladi Senior. I don't think anyone has that much uppercut in their swing. So the Guardians drafted Brady Aiken. Everyone knew he had like a thin muscle up here was the weirdness with his. But with Brady Aiken, he was drafted first overall. He was the number 1 player on my board. I comped him to Clayton Kershaw. Go ahead and make fun of me for that. If I'm gonna call out the good ones, I'll call out the bad ones. I had him in my early season board at 10th, and then all of a sudden he was throwing 97. It was like, wow, this guy already had everything else, and now he's got velocity. Clear top player on the board. He goes number 1 to the Astros. They look at that arm and they go, oh no, and they changed their offer. They offered him the minimum they could offer. But they weren't going to offer him full slate there. And he decided to go back and try to reestablish his value. Now, they did that knowing they'd lose a mid-round pick, Jacob Nix, who ended up going, I want to say, to the Padres maybe the next year. Did he go to a JUCO first? But either way, they lost out on Nix and they lost out on Aiken, but they allowed them to get another draft pick. That draft pick turned into Alex Bregman. And since they also had another top 5 pick in where they took Kyle Tucker, those two picks gave them enough money to come back in the comp round and sign Daz Cameron, who was a central piece to adding Justin Verlander. So by not signing Brady Aiken, the Houston Astros essentially made their championship window occur. If they sign Aiken, they lose Bregman, they lose Verlander, and that team is not the same team as it was. Sometimes, you get, I guess in this case, lucky that he didn't even accept the lesser offer. But man, yeah, it is an ugly situation for that team. It's for the Rangers fan. Like, I don't get it. And and they didn't share his medicals. I don't know. And again, like I was telling Bryce over here, I was like, well, hey, maybe they're gonna do some money savings and send it out to you. Maybe you'll get a nice guy. But can you really bank on someone falling to the third round? If I were to, do I still have? Let's see, the Rangers' next pick. I'm sorry, Andy. I don't get it. I don't understand it. There's a lot of... Yeah, their next pick is 109 in the 4th round. So who are you saving money for? Now, in fairness, the Rangers had the 14th biggest pool, even though they're picking 3rd overall, because they don't have a 2nd or a 3rd. So that really affected their pool. I assume this is going to be under Slot. I mean, he was facing more in the teens. There is a chance. I mean, listen. If you are a Rangers fan, this is what I'm going to tell you. There is always a prep arm that slides. There is always someone who goes to college. There is always a Cole Wilcox. There is always, Cade Horton in this class, who's probably going to go in the first half of the first round. Now, he was a guy who wanted to go to college, so it's hard. But, you can look no further than Cade Horton as a guy who was a big-name prospect. You can go through and find those guys. There's always someone who slides. So if they save a lot of money, there is always an interesting prep guy, even in the 4th round. So I know it's hard if you're a Rangers fan right now, and I absolutely don't blame anyone who is upset by what occurred, because that is, I feel like, a kick in the pants when you are picking that high to take a guy at 3 who wasn't a top 10 of any board this year. But there's always a player who's going to slide. There's always someone left on the board. I'm trying to think who were the... well, why am I saying why do I have to think? I can just go tell you. I can go look at my board from a year ago, and if you're ever curious to see my board, before this, for those who are new, I guess I should re-rack as we move later into the show here. My name is Jeff Ellis. I host Locked On Guardians. Before that, I was a lead draft and prospect analyst at Scout and 24/7. Scout ran out of money and got bought by CBS. I was supposed to then have stuff appear on CBS. Unfortunately for me, that did not come together. And then 24/7 cut all of baseball. So I was very lucky to come to Locked On, but we already had prospect people. So I am glad to talk about the Guardians. They are my home team, as it were, but I do miss talking draft, talking prospects. It was kind of my first baseball writing love, and going back to, I was just looking at my list from a year ago, who Alex Mooney went to school. He was my 39th overall player, a shortstop from Orchard St. Lake, who right now looks like a potential, is he draft eligible? I think he might be draft eligible next year. I think he might be a guy who's looking at a top 10 next year. Gage Jump, I believe, made it to school. I don't think he signed with anyone, who was 43rd overall. So that's 2 guys in my top 50. The Jay Allen, I feel like the Reds got Jay Allen. I could be wrong, or the Reds like Jay. I think Jay Allen signed. So there were 2 guys in my top 50 who did not get to college. So to the Rangers fans, don't give up hope. There will be someone there, and if you saved enough money, yep. So Jay Allen was to the Reds, and then Gage Jump got to UCLA. So you had Gage Jump, and then Alex Mooney, who I should probably look at. But I think he's going to be like a top 10 guy next year. Nats have already grabbed Green. Oh, man. Well, thank you to John, who's joined us, and Steve Granado, who's joined us as well. Nats take Elijah Green. I only say all man there. It makes sense. When I've always talked about the Nationals, you can almost, people like to say they like ceiling or they like, they go for a guy who's hurt or this. The Nats take a sliding talent, and it's often like, who was the big, go back to like when I wrote my way too early mock, and like basically at the end of the season, who was the number one player on every board, and that's who they go for. It's those guys who slid in value. It's who the Nats love to grab. Cade Cavalli was an example. Like, he was a guy many people thought could be a top 10 guy, slid a little bit after his year wasn't that great that year. I get myself in trouble, but I believe Oklahoma, not Oklahoma State. But if I get it wrong, I apologize. I know it's a big thing to get wrong. So they take a sliding talent. A lot of people, thought Green was a very, very special type of talent. Not the guy I would take here personally, but it is interesting if they grab him. Here's what I know. John Sickles and Jim Callis are the guys that got me following prospects and on a religious level. And Sickles did a great piece years ago that I bought. I paid for this whole thing he did where he looked at every single draft class and wrote about what he got wrong. Uh-oh, I've got some frame rate issues. You are going to experience buffering. All of a sudden, it just went to unhealthy here. Well, I guess let me know in the chat how bad this buffering is. But at the end of the day, when I look at this, it makes perfect sense because a lot of people had Green as like the number one player in this class early on. But I'm still sad it wasn't Parada because I had him there at the very start of this whole thing. At the same time, though, I mean, outside of Kumar Rocker, it's been all the ceiling prep guys. Like, the big four in terms of ceiling are now off the board. Yeah, he makes perfect sense at this pick. I saw that Andy responded to tell me that... thumbs up. Okay, so it got better. Thank you. Thank you to Bruce, who's also joined us in here. Thank you to, like I said, John. You're the one who actually broke the Elijah Green one to me. Steve, yeah. Gage slid way down because he's small. Like, it was always going to be a hard thing with him when you are the size that he is. So I'm not surprised that he slid, but I think he's going to be an interesting guy. It's always going to be hard to overcome the size concerns. Andy, I think, saying he's a red to Jay Allen. And then Holiday was a good first pick. He's not who I would take, but he's not a bad pick. And again, you don't necessarily draft for need, but there's a lot of things that I talk about up and down when it comes to the draft. Oh yeah, he's got everything but hit tool. That's what it comes down to. It's like, I know B Skrills, you're a Guardians fan. Like, there's a world where he's Will Benson, though, is the problem. Like, if a good outcome is not that, but there's a world where he's Will Benson. Like, that's the problem on the other side of it. So, yeah, he's not a bad pick there. And for Holiday, oh man, see, this is the problem. I get distracted. Yeah, no, I agree with what Steve's saying here. I mean, here's the thing. Like, Jay Serra, honestly, is, and he knows this, but to other people who don't, like, that's the program. You can go through. I mean, I remember watching like a Horizon League matchup, and University of Chicago had a kid who was just destroying the baseball that year, and I can't think of his name. And I'm like, here's this kid at the University of Chicago, not University of Chicago. God, it's why can't it's the school Curtis Granderson went to, and it's like one of the top teams always in the Frontier League, and I'm just blanking right now. But he went to J. Sarah. Like, I feel like if you started at J. Sarah, you probably got a college scholarship to some degree somewhere. And yeah, here's everything he's saying in chat. Like, I don't have anything to add to what Steve has said because it's all dead on. Like, it's just the size question. Like, if Gage Jump had like 5 more inches, he probably goes in the top 10 picks. Like, it's that kind of situation. But to go back to my point on Holiday. See, and Steve's given us even more great stuff in there. Yeah, Silva, I forgot that he was there as well. That program is just always loaded. No, Victor Robles isn't fair because Victor Robles, I never felt like had much power. I felt like he was always a guy that was good defense. Like, and Robles covers a lot of ground. Like, he's a better defender. It's big power too. Like I said, like it's like legitimate like 70 grade power potential. So we'll see. I got so off track here because I was responding to everything in here. That one, the Marlins are on the board and all their prep targets are gone, so this will be interesting. But Jacob Berry is the hot name leading up to the draft. We'll see. So I talked about that when you draft a guy in your slot, it's trading down. That when you save that money, it's essentially the equivalent of trading down in another draft. You're using that money to pull up and get a higher value player later. And then the other one is that shortstops are the quarterback of the MLB draft. They always rise, and every team needs them. And if you can play shortstop, you can just move off and play anywhere else. And even if you're not great at shortstop, most players who are the best athletes play shortstop, especially in high school. So, yeah, I think it's a fine pick. Hey, I got 2 right. Marlins. I mean, I don't like this pick at all. This is, in my opinion, the second worst pick overall, but. Because Barry hits well, but I was reading some stuff on him that, like, some of the exit velocity stuff isn't necessarily spectacular. There's questions about position. And one of my other long-standing draft theories is that sometimes when you go too safe, you're setting yourself up to fail. And I never explain it well, I feel like. But when a guy is just kind of average across the board or just kind of good across the board, everything has to work. And if... let's say all of a sudden his power is average instead of being above average, he's not a starter at first base. If the hit tool ends up being a little bit below average because you're going to start facing hitting in the minors unlike, anything you ever faced in college, even in the SEC, which is great. And I appreciate everything he did. Like, I think he's a future major leaguer, and I think he's a big to the major, or big, quick to the majors guy, but I think there's a lot more risk with a safe player because you have to be exceptional at something to be good, and I'm not sure that Barry is exceptional. I think he's good across the board, and I have him 10th. It's not like I'm super low, but at this point in the draft, not for me. I always think about guys like Pavin Smith. I keep coming back to that. But at the same time, for the Marlins, I will say, hey, it's saying my stream health is excellent. The Marlins look like they got a good player. He's safe, Yeah, I do remember BJ Surhoff being drafted first overall. There's no guarantee with any of these guys. The Cleveland Guardians, because, I talk Yeah, 1985. Well, fun fact: like the Cleveland Guardians have never picked first overall, and they 2 years in a row had the number 2 overall pick because it used to go back and forth, like AL, NL, AL, NL, AL, NL, NL. So it would go back and forth. So the Guardians, the years would only ever finish with the worst record in baseball when it was the NL's year to pick first, and then the 2 years they picked second. The 1 year nestled in between, if they had been like really bad for just 3 years in a row, the player that went first overall that year was Ken Griffey Jr. So they took, let's see, that was like Greg Swindell was one of those picks, and then I don't think that was the Mark Lewis one. I think that was later, and it certainly wasn't the Paul Shuey one. But yeah, no, they had 1 year they were decent, and then the 2 years they were awful, and then they managed to not line it up. Which is also funny because like Griffey was out of an Ohio school, and the year before that, the first prep player was also from an Ohio school, Kent Marker from Dublin, who made it to the big leagues. So it worked out pretty well. But Ohio might have its first rounder in this draft since Matthew Smorrell went to the Blue Jays in 2012. So that's something fun to look at. I'm not sure exactly how long they have. It's one of those things I probably should know. I think it's with what they're trying to get in, it's probably like 5 to 10. I don't think it's like the NFL with that 15-minute clock. But yeah, I mean, listen, Barry is a fine selection. Drafted as a third baseman, that is very wishful thinking for him. He's a DH, but dude can hit, and he should get there quickly. What is he? He's a switch hitter too, which appeal. But at the same time, like you look at the Marlins' own history. Remember when they took the super safe pick of JJ Bleday? Go look how that's panned out. Like sometimes it's not the way. Well, I mean, yeah, Lindor was a great draft pick. That was after some truly horrific ones in the years leading up to that. They were. What was it between like CC Sabathia and Lonnie Chisenhall? I don't think they produced anything, and the second round is a cursed round for the Guardians. We'll see, like if Nolan Jones and Tyler Freeman can break it, but that is, you do have Jason Kipnis and Albert Bell, but man, there was basically between Bell and Kipnis, it was pretty ugly. And let's see what the Cubs do here. Cam Collier was the player linked to them throughout, and then based on who's still on the board, you still got Brooks Lee as well. And Parada, the catcher. CC was a first rounder, yeah. He was like in the early 20s of that draft class. But between him and like Chisenhall, they had like 20 picks. Cade Horton. Okay. There was talk about him going high. Interesting. Like, I mean, here's the thing. Horton was really liked out of high school. He's really interesting. It's hard for me to get behind a guy. He didn't make my top 50 prospects because we just didn't see him play a lot. I need to be able to get more on a guy, and you're basing a lot of it just on what you saw, that very limited sample size. I don't know. It's a gamble. He's rumored to be very expensive. And you can just look at the numbers this year, and yes, it was much different in the postseason, but small sample size. Oof, that's... I mean, the rumor was the Cubs wanted to go underslot here to go get someone in round 2. And here's the thing, Horton is a great athlete, was a legit two-way prospect out of high school. Would have been drafted as a shortstop or as a pitcher, but I mean, everyone knew the future was on the mound. He got hurt. We just haven't seen him play a lot. There's actually some interesting, like, bad history with quarterbacks who become pitchers. We'll see, like, Texas has a pair of them right now, but there's been a lot of quarterbacks to pitchers, and it hasn't worked out always for the best. So we'll see if they can also change that here. But Again, to me, Horton was not a top 10 player in this class. He's going to cost you top 10 money. I don't think this is an underslot savings. I think they're going to pay him a lot. And I will say this is where it's interesting. Like, I never thought we'd see the day when a right-handed pitcher who was 6'1" would go in the top 10. Like that for a long time, anything below 6'3" was considered like you had an impairment relative to your size. And to see that is a nice kind of difference just overall for the way things go in this draft. It's not the pick I make because there's just too much risk in that profile. But this is a kid. I believe he would have been. He's the pure draft eligible sophomore right now. Because he'll be 21 in August. So and he's a guy that again he benefits. Like if they don't move another like interesting thing. It's like the draft being a month later. All of those summer birthdays. Like, because, summer birthdays are such a big cutoff. There's so many more draft eligible sophomores now. And Horton's one of those guys that if we still use the old draft approach, he wouldn't have been eligible for this class. If this draft was in the beginning of June, like it used to be, Cade Horton isn't even someone who could be drafted. Instead, we'd be talking about him for next year's class as a potential, like, top 10 player based on what we saw in the postseason. So, it's like I said, it's not a terrible pick. It is a high-risk pick. Big risk, big reward. We'll see. A little bit surprising just, with the Cubs and their front office coming from Cleveland. Cleveland has avoided draft-eligible sophomores like the plague. I'm starting a piece of collecting data on draft-eligible sophomores and also on siblings because I have a theory that the younger siblings tend to outperform the elder siblings. So I'm collecting data, and I'm also collecting data on draft-eligible sophomores to see the hit and failure rate overall to see why it is that it does seem that certain teams won't draft those players. So... there's some concerns there, but now we have the Twins getting ready. I don't know, this whole presentation is kind of... I don't know if I dislike it just because of my dislike for Manfred or if there's another reason. I do want to give a quick heads up. I promised my friends over at Royals Farm Report that I would be hopping on with them after the Royals pick, so I'm going to stop the stream and then come back to the stream, or I'm going to pause the stream. I got to figure out what I'm doing, but I'm going to pause the stream for a bit, go do one show, and then come back. I will make sure to alert via Twitter when I come back in to discuss the draft. It's been interesting. I mean, if you just look at the rankings, for instance, on MLB, player 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 have been drafted, as well as 24 and 38. So 5 and 6, which I assume are the two college guys, still on the board as we get to the 8th pick. And you got 5, 6, and 8 still all left on their board. On my board, I have player 2, 5, 6, 8, 9. Yeah, 8, 9, because 10 was Barry. So I still have, multiple, talking 5 of the top 10 still left right now as we approach the 8th overall pick. So I'm curious to see. For the Twins, I mean, Collier was the hot rumor late in the process. Let's see. So if you're curious to continue to go back, my way too early mock. He does look like he's moving out there very slow, Beast Grills. I agree. I had Barry going 4 to the Pirates. So Tamar Johnson was my sleeper. So I should go tweet that out. Because, hey, I got that one right. An interesting connection. I don't know if I necessarily want to say right, but a fun connection. Let's see. I need to go back to... Was it in October that I posted it? Oh, yeah, I posted October 3rd. So yeah, I had Barry there. My Texas pick was Jace Jung, Daniel Susac sleeper. Nationals, Parada with Dylan Lesko is my sleeper. Man, I really wanted that to happen. The Marlins, Tamar Johnson was my way too early one, which I had a chance with Kumar Rocker as a sleeper. Chicago Cubs, Daniel Susac with sleeper Reggie Crawford. Twins, 8. Isn't going to happen. That was Drew Jones, sleeper Dylan Lesko. with the Royals going Dylan Lesko, with me then being the jerk that I've been and making the sleeper Robert Moore with that particular selection. Let's see what the Twins do. Is it going to be Collier? I mean, they're the ones that had one of the craziest rumors overall, which was possibly Ivan Melendez at the 8th overall pick. Now, he is there in person. Now, they have had guys come there who didn't get drafted right away, so it's not quite like the NFL draft. Collier and Neto. So it's 5 minutes between picks. Yeah, I'm very, Neto's been a guy that most people thought was going to go somewhere in the top 10. And let's see who we got. The one downside to the mute is I see all the lips moving, and it takes them forever to pop up on the board. The NBA and the NFL do it much faster. So, Brooks Lee. Okay, I mean, that's a good pick. What am I going to say? Like, they took the top player, one of the top players left. That's a nice pick by the Twins. I mean, sometimes you got to be lucky, and they were lucky. Brooks Lee, top college player in this class, yet the 3rd college player off the board. Nice pick for them. I don't think there's any other way around it. That's a nice pick for them. Lee, he just does it all. I think there is a chance he could stick at shortstop. Most likely moves out the position, but I think there's a small chance he could stay there. Hits for average, almost impossible to strike out. When you look at guys who just make contact, the rise of the value in contact rates, that's exactly what you see with Brooks Lee. I mean, he is what teams are looking for now. And he is, to me, the safest player in this draft because all he does is hit. He would have been a first rounder out of high school, but he wanted to go play for his dad at Cal Poly. That's why he ended up at Cal Poly instead of a bigger program. He hits whole field. It's a similar package to Tamar Johnson, but a little bit stronger arm, a little bit more proven, and not as much ceiling. But yeah, Twins just got lucky. They got a clear top 5 player who shouldn't have been there, but was, because of the fact that the draft played out weird. We've had 3 guys kind of make things swerve a bit, and in fairness, only 2 guys that have really pushed the rest of the board down. Everyone else has been kind of in the right range. Rocker and Horton were definitely kind of surprises. And Halladay was more of a surprise. He wasn't a bad value. It was just that there was like 4 other players that were viewed as more likely for that selection. So, yeah, it's Kansas City's on the clock. So after this pick happens, I am going to pause this stream. I guess I'll maybe open a new one. I got to figure out. But I will jump back in a second here. After this pick is made, I promised I would go join the Royals Farm Report dudes and talk about their pick. So yeah, I'm just gonna jump in and do theirs and talk about the draft. But yeah, the Royals are in a nice position as well. Cam Collier is still on the board. Kevin Parada is still on the board. There's a lot of ways you can go. The college guys are sliding. Gavin Cross, if he is someone I'm not as high on, but I really like Jace Jung. The college bats are sliding. I thought that they would go sooner. Right now, the Royals are calling someone. So let's see who this pick is with the last one. Neto is still there. He could make some sense. Collier's got a chance to get to the Mets, which I talked about in one of my mocks. Like, there was a crazy mock where he gets there. But, yeah, I mean, I just kind of look at it personally. Oh, co-host wants in. I'd have a hard time passing on Cam Collier if I was anyone. So we'll end right here with this selection. I want to thank everyone who's come in. And again, I'll be back. This is just kind of me bopping around as the evening progresses. I'll probably do just a live stream recording of Lockdown. Well, no, I want to wait for all the picks, so I won't do the Lockdown Guardians tonight until after. And there we go. Gavin Cross. I'm not as high on Cross, but hey, I believe I got that right in my mock. That's 3 right for me. And like I said, I'll be back. I'm going to pause my stream. I have to stop my stream. I'm going to start a new stream when I come back in, learning how these things go. But I want to thank everyone who joined in, everyone who jumped in, had comments, who said something. And again, I will be back after I do this, do some time with some others and just hop around throughout the evening. But thank you all again. And I will be back for more fun.